business started back in 2015, where I registered the business. It was also just as we finished our MBA at GIBS. So interesting fact, my wife and I actually did the MBA together.
Oh, nice.
And we were in the same group as well. So I still think it was a bit of a research project on how MBAs affect relationships and the old spousal relationship and so on. So I would say that just thinking back to our MBA days, that if at all possible, and if you have a partner who also want to do MBA, do it together. I think it's just the best way to do it because you can share so much. You almost become your own little peer group, between the two of you, and just sharing ideas and so on. And if I can give people just a bit of advice, if you are going to do the MBA, if you have a partner and the partner wants to do it as well, by all means try and do it together. So we finished the MBA at GIBS in 2015, but I had firstly we were originally from Cape Town, so we moved up in 2013. And the reason for the move was really my wife had an opportunity for promotion at the company that she was at. And at that point, I was also starting to, wanting to know more about business. Up until that point, I had always been in corporate, employed in an HR position. So sort of a number of companies from Virgin Active to DigiCape in Cape Town to the Smollen Group and so on. So it was nice brands and nice companies to work for. But sort of in 2013, beginning of 2013, I was starting to think I would like to branch out more. I want to go and further my studies. Yes. And then the thought was, okay, what kind of studies? Is it further into HR? Or what I ultimately decided to do was the MBA, because it just gave you much more broader insight into business in general. Exactly, essentially, it's a general management course.
Correct, right? Yeah.
So we decided to tackle this beast back in 2013. So we decided 2013, like they always say, the biggest changes in life is, moving, changing jobs, etc. So we did all of that in 2013. So we relocated up here to Centurion with the kids. My mom came up with our dogs, the whole thing. We uprooted completely. So we came up in 2013, made all those changes, and then the next year we started the MBA. First year we did the modular course, in the Green Group. So shout out to my fellow Green Group alumni there.
The fancy people.
Maybe not the naughtiest group. I'll put it this way. So and just how the consulting thing started, just to give you some insight into that is. So when my wife had this opportunity for the promotion, and I was thinking of also branching out into a more of a consulting role.
Correct.
And I'll always think back to and be very grateful to my then MD at DigiCape, the managing director, and we had a very good relationship. And I suppose back then, this is pre-COVID, of course, when working from home and working remotely was not a thing yet. So I essentially went to him and I did a bit of a presentation. I said to him, look, I'm doing this. We are definitely relocating, but I would like to still be involved with DigiCape. How can we make this happen? So I proposed a sort of a remote HR service. Once a month I would fly down to Cape Town, visit on Manco, Exco, etc. And also at that point it was, things were ticking over. I didn't need to be there physically, once a day type of thing. So it worked out well. So for the first year of consulting, and I suppose, which was a big, why I was so grateful, because it essentially gave me a safety net. Our agreement essentially was that half days I would still be providing services to DigiCape. And then that leaves me the rest of the day to sort of look at consulting opportunities and so on.
Sure. Well, what were you using back then? Skype?
It was Skype and it was phone calls and emails basically. There was no such thing as Zoom. I didn't know Zoom back then. Or Teams or anything. So it's pretty much just phone calls and emails and so on.
Sure.
And also obviously the human capital management speaks for itself, but the Aspire specifically around entrepreneurship, being aspirational,
Yes.
helping businesses grow. So really that's where the name comes from, and ultimately what the purpose of Aspire is.
Okay, so let's leave the, your first anchor client / former employer, who is usually our first and best client. Then how did you then start getting other, let's say your first real client? Like how did you go about getting your first real client, like out of?
So I would say the one after DigiCape, and I think again, and if I look at myself, I will never be a salesperson, right? It's never. I should not try.
Yeah.
So my approach has really just been, especially because moving up from Cape Town to Joburg, although we don't have any family, but I had quite a lot of sort of people I knew up here. So my network was there, which was the positive thing. So soon after we moved up, I remember getting into contact with an old boss of mine, and we had a coffee just to get a lay of the land. It's just what is available, not just and he was at Smollen then, at the Smollen Group, not just at Smollen, but just to start getting out more. Just getting out, getting to know people, start chatting. And I think that sort of was the big thing for me is getting yourself out there.
Correct.
And how many cups of coffee you drink a day, but just starting the conversation. So essentially my strategy, if you like, after DigiCape, or to increase the client base from DigiCape's days, was just using my networks. And I think the positive thing as far as that is concerned, you've worked with these people.
Correct.
You already have credibility.
Correct.
They know what you've done. So it's just a much easier in. So that's pretty much my approach.
Yeah, and that's actually quite a common theme that, I think they say consulting / entrepreneurship is a contact sport. Like you really have to touch as many people that you know as possible, because you really don't know one or two pop, and obviously you'll get some gigs, and on some you really won't get any gigs. Oh, okay, interesting. But I think that's the common theme, really. Like even
and I think also, sorry, if I can just add to that, also the difference between, I'm not selling a product, I'm selling a service. And for me, that's always been important, that I can't sell the service unless I've sold myself.
Correct.
Because if a client phones me with an HR problem or people problem, whatever, they must first know that or I must have the credibility with them to ensure that they trust what I'm telling them. So, and I think, and that for me has always been a bit of a distinction between what kind of business you have. If it's the sort of product-focused business, manufacturing, whatever, in terms of entrepreneurship, or a service business, which is slightly different. And from my perspective, it's more around the interpersonal relationship. And even if there's no revenue, but it's important to build up that level of trust, and regularly see people, regularly just pop up for a cup of coffee or something. And probably most of my, what do you want to call it, assignments or projects, have actually come from those relationships. Just or for example, in the recruitment space. Recruiters would phone you for HR permanent roles, and then, let's have a conversation, because can we not sort of look at this role as a possible consulting / part-time type contract role. So I think the main, I suppose, outtake for me was just be very flexible and always open to opportunities, and really put yourself out there. Oh, it's very tempting. I won't lie to you. I have considered going back into permanent employment, actually. And I think ultimately you have to believe in what you're trying to achieve. I mean, if you don't believe it, how do you expect anyone else to believe in you?
Correct.
Or your client, or your family, etc. And yes, I mean, opportunities do come along for employment, and especially whilst you are working in your network, and this network is basically consisting of ex-employers. So, for example, the smaller one, or a previous employer, in terms of the flexibility, there was a 6-month sort of stand-in role for one of the business units. So, those types of things come up. Always go back to what made you start out on this path initially. Just constantly go back to the why. Yeah, exactly. And that why is so important because, yes, you could make more money. You're permanently employed, sort of in the short
it's
term.
Safer.
It's safer. So you have the stability, etc. Although in this market, in this current climate, don't really know what job is safe.
Exactly.
But I think always go back to the why. Why are you doing this? And have you achieved what you wanted to achieve? And if you've not achieved, why are you now changing that? If you are aware of what you're doing and the reasons for, and that is justified in your mind, perfectly fine. But have a reason. Don't just, so there's a good offer put on the table and then your eyes go that big because there's a lot of zeros there. And those opportunities will come. But I think, for me, what's always worked is just go back to the why. And until I've achieved what I want to achieve. And that is not always very clear.
I was actually about to ask, in one sentence, what's your why?
What's my why? My why, essentially, Thibaut, is helping people. And my wife will probably tell you that my biggest gripe is just how people make decisions and what informs those decisions. And unfortunately, and I don't want to be a cynic or pessimistic or anything, but we see this every day, in our politicians, big business, corporate, etc., how decisions are made and the consequences of poor decision making. And in my field especially, where you're dealing with relationships, HR and the employment relationship is no different to any other relationship. Which is why the interesting thing was, we're still in the month of love, I suppose, with February. But there are so many commonalities in terms of any types of relationship, and to bring it back to the employment relationship. Whether it's a romantic relationship or a sort of a familial type relationship, the core elements are still the same. We all want there to be balance in the relationship. We all want our needs to be met by the other person, and the other person's expectation to be met by you. So a lot of times, and again, especially in the HR space, in the IR, employment relationship space, that's where the wheels come off. That's where the issues start sort of appearing, where it's simply the relationship it's a matter of one party is not getting what they need from this relationship.
Correct.
Whether it's the employer or the employee.
Correct.
And so that is always my focus in terms of whatever people problems come up. It comes down to the relationship ultimately. So I have more than 20 years experience in human resources in different positions, different industries. So it's really the full suite of HR services, from recruitment and even pre-recruitment, where you're looking at assessments, etc. Although I'm not a psychometrist, but I work with psychometrists.
Yes.
So it's really from the recruitment stage through to the employment admin, leave, sick leave, annual leave, etc., until termination. So the full employment cycle, I would say. And those are really what would typically be called HR operational services. And then very focused and very passionate about my strategic services as well. So essentially, my path with the client is always to start with the basics, start with the HR operational services, start with compliance. And the reason for compliance, and I always say, fear does not change behavior. Something aspirational
Yes.
changes behavior.
Yes.
So
Pull versus push type of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of services or HR services sort of punt this compliance, do this or else. So it's a sort of a risk management type process because when the Department of Labour comes knocking, you want to be compliant.
And
right?
the CCMA.
And the CCMA. But I sort of look at it from a different perspective because I would rather say, make sure you are compliant and you, for want of a better word, ticking all the boxes.
Correct, yeah.
For the right reasons.
Yeah.
And those reasons should not be because I am scared of a Department of Labour inspection or I'm going to go to the CCMA.
Yeah.
Those reasons, in my opinion, should be I want to show my employees that I'm an established business.
Correct.
I look after my employees and I am a responsible employer.
Correct.
So if that is why you're doing it, absolutely do it. And I suppose you can do it as well just to tick a box. But if you really want to get the benefit out of whatever you do from an HR point of view, make sure that people know why you're doing it and do it for the right reasons.
Yes.
Yeah, I think like most other businesses out there, things came to a grinding halt for those first 3 weeks of lockdown. And then I think after the 3 weeks, we tried to make sense of it and how do we still carry on? Obviously, you can't travel anyway, so most of the consulting went online. So pretty much Zoom, Teams calls, telephonic calls, etc. But nothing else was really happening. You know, we had a couple of proposals lined up with clients just as COVID hit, and that sort of was all put on the back burner, understandably so, because there was so much uncertainty out there. So it essentially pivoted to just making sure that you're still accessible to clients, being remote, telephonic, not sitting and waiting for the client, regular phone calls, just to check in, how's it going? Do you need this? Do you have this? Especially around policies, health and safety policies, COVID policies. So a lot of focus went there because that was the immediate need. But the bigger projects, things like job grading, banding, remuneration, etc., that we had lined up with a big client just came to a grinding halt.
Exactly, because I'd say if you're in HR, like COVID was the ultimate test. Like, remember how if a company retrenched or cut salaries in half or people lost their jobs, like it was a test of, let's say the company's HR strategy. Like, like how do you really pivot like in such a catastrophic event, which COVID really was, like to everyone. Yeah, but okay, I guess because you had worked remotely, I think for you it worked in your favor. Like you just went back to your
I suppose again because I'm not selling products, I'm not in manufacturing, so the service aspect, you could sort of pivot very easily. It was more a case of it affected the clients more than it affected my business. Although indirectly it then affected my business. But so personally and from my business perspective, it wasn't a major sort of a challenge because we could just go remotely.
Correct. Yeah.
But it's certainly been a very tough time in the last 2.5 years. I mean, I recall in the first year of COVID. Because things were just shutting down.
Correct, yeah.
And one of my bigger clients in the advertising space, we had to retrench 50% of their people. So it's a bit of you shoot yourself in the foot because you're almost closing down the business for the client. Yeah. But that is, unfortunately, we couldn't get away from that. But you carry on and I think ultimately you need to just focus on the positives. Yeah, look, one other thing also happened in I would say my first year with COVID. A lot of time to think, a lot of time to reflect. And it sort of just hit me like a ton of bricks that I should be studying law. Yeah. So last year I registered for a Bachelor of Laws through UNISA, so that's what I'm studying now as well.
labor law mostly, or is it?
No, it's I'm planning on becoming an attorney. So,
really? Nice.
Yeah, at this ripe old age. So it's never too old to start studying or to carry on with your studies.
Yeah.
And look, the idea in terms of the business model is human resource management is already very close to the law or the legal aspect of things, right? You have your contracts, IR, and so on. So the idea is for the next 4 years or so, whilst I'm studying, it's also assisting me with the HR stuff, gaining more knowledge, etc. And maybe just let me make a point to the alumni out there, and something I feel really passionate about.
Sure.
Is for business owners, entrepreneurs to continuously upskill ourselves. Whether it's in your own industry, in your own business, or doing a course that helps you run your business better, etc. And I think we need to always be conscious of investing in ourselves.
Correct. Yeah.
And then quite often the focus is I'm investing in my business.
Yes.
But you are your business.
Correct.
So if you're not investing in yourself, you're not going to get those return on investments and growth in the business, because you as the entrepreneur needs to grow as well with the business.
Yeah. You always have to be smarter than your client.
Try to be. Yeah. And like I said, I really love giving back. I enjoy giving back. And so what I want to offer for the month of March is for all entrepreneurs out there for a 1 hour HR advisory service. And what I'm thinking is to have an initial hourly session with the guys, and this will be free of charge, without any obligation. And then we can schedule further sessions throughout the month of March. But and obviously depending on just how big the need is out there. I'm hoping there's a big need. Because like I said, I have cleared my Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. So when the guys do get hold of me, we will schedule those sessions, and I'm happy to advise them on any people or HR related issue, whether it's a recruitment issue, a training issue, IR, employment relationship issues.
Yes.
You can benefit from more than 20 years of experience in different industries. And I think the other thing also is I've always been an HR generalist, so I've never specialized in only one area, because I've always been too interested in all of the stuff that's happening. That is an offer I'm happy to make. Like I said, just to confirm, Monday, Wednesday, Friday is where I'll clear my schedule, and the guys can contact me. And I think the best way to do this is to go to the website. The Aspire website is www.aspirehcm.co.za. That's aspirehcm.co.za. Please fill in the contact list, and I will get those details, and then I'll be in touch with everyone who has completed the contact list. I would say that, and this is probably what irritates and frustrates most HR people, is that HR is seen as a support service in your bigger corporate structures, etc.
Yeah, usually cuts across.
Yeah, which I'm very, very anti in terms of that. And whenever you put people interventions in place, people processes in place, it's generally or quite often referred to as, the warm and fuzzy things.
Yes.
But ultimately, this is the core of your business. So whenever someone calls an HR intervention or project or process the warm and fuzzy things, remember that your biggest lever in terms of profitability in your business is, or profitability is productivity and turnover.
Yes.
Turnover in terms of people staying with you for longer periods of time, because it's
institutional memory as well.
Exactly. So, and who's responsible for the productivity? Who's responsible for the turnover? Those are your people.
Yeah.
So, next time you talk about warm and fuzzy things, just consider this. This is the core of your business.